All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. This video PowerPoint will be on President James Monroe and how he created a strong federal government. All right, some things that we're going to notice here. We're going to find that there was a feeling of national unity that followed the War of 1812. Why Spain ceded Florida to the U.S., Spanish territories in the Americas and how they gained independence, and then finally why the Monroe Doctrine was issued. Some important terms that you may not be aware of. A contract. This is an agreement between two or more parties that can be enforced by law. Capitalism. This is a type of economic system in which privately owned businesses compete in a free market. Interstate commerce, trade between two or more states, and then finally a charter, a legal document giving certain rights to a person or company. Okay, how was the power of the federal government strengthened during the era of good feelings? You'll read about this in a few minutes when we're done with the PowerPoint. But again, President Monroe's term of office is often known as the era of good feelings. Again, the President, Congress, the Supreme Court all acted to increase federal authority. So, a lot of this tied in with the War of 1812 and our victory there. But again, the country's growing, it's becoming stronger. How did U.S. foreign affairs reflect a new national confidence? When members of Spanish and English colonies began to rebel, European countries ultimately failed to regain their power in the region. President James Monroe stated that the U.S. firmly opposed European influence in the Americas. If you look at the map here, again, in the early 1800s, Spain controlled a vast amount of territory in the Americas. So this would be this, massive acreage of land. Whether we're talking about southwest of our current continental United States or down into Mexico, Central America. And you can see here by the key that, again, the key is referring to Lewis and Clark. But again, you can see how the U.S., through the American Revolution, obtained land to the Mississippi, the Louisiana Purchase, that was under Jefferson. And now we're going to find out how a lot of these more land will be added to the continental U.S. Spain is having a hard time with Florida, and we're about to obtain that here. Fugitive slaves could easily cross from southern plantations into Florida and join the Seminole Nation. Again, this was a problem for southern planters. And then together they would often go and then they would raid, whether it be Georgia, South Carolina. This was causing problems. In 1817, the U.S. sent Andrew Jackson to recapture slaves that had escaped to Florida. Jackson goes beyond his orders. He seizes two Spanish towns, and Spain couldn't protect Florida. Remember, this is far north, so it decided to give up the territory. In the Adams-Onis Treaty in 1819, Spain ceded the Florida to the U.S. So again, this is Spain relinquishing some of their territory. Spain's colonies in Latin America wanted independence as well. They were inspired by the revolutions in America and France. Mexico leads the way in 1810. Father Miguel Hidalgo organized an army that freed several provinces. Another revolution breaks out in 1820. Spain could not end the fighting. Mexico became an independent monarchy in 1821. And by 1823, it becomes a federal republic. In South America, Simón Bolívar led several independence movements. In 1819, he defeated the Spanish in Colombia. He becomes president of the Republic of Great Colombia. Again, today this region includes Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Panama. Other countries or other colonies followed. By 1825, most parts of Latin America had thrown off European rule. So again, I want you to take a close look at this map, and this is going to lead up to James Monroe and the Monroe Doctrine. But again, this purple area here, these are all new nations. This used to be Spain, but now you have Mexico, Brazil, Peru. Some of these I think you would be familiar with. So these are brand new nations. Another way to think of it is, North, Central, and South America, this is the new part of the world. Okay? And as far as European colonies go, the green, you can see that there are very, very few left. Again, so a lot of new countries. The future of these new countries was soon clouded. France, Russia, and others indicated they might help Spain regain its colonies. The U.S. wanted to protect trade with Latin America, so we saw this as an opportunity. Britain agreed with the U.S. and wanted to issue a joint statement. This by itself is successful. Again, we had been through 2 wars with Britain, the American Revolution, the War of 1812. The fact that Britain wanted to work with us and didn't want to go to war, again, that shows that we had become a strong federal government. President James Monroe and Secretary of State John Quincy Adams, by the way, that's John Adams' son, did not want the U.S. to look like Britain's junior partner, so Monroe issues a statement, and this becomes famous in U.S. history. So the Monroe Doctrine is issued in 1823, and it says that the U.S. would not allow European nations to create American colonies or interfere with Latin American nations. This was less about a European nation trying to colonize what we currently had as the United States, but more Central and Southern America. We didn't want Europe over there. We wanted to keep this as the new part of the world. At first, the U.S. relied on Britain's Navy to enforce the doctrine, but as our power grew, the Monroe Doctrine boosted U.S. influence in Latin America. And again, we were relieved that our southern borders were secure from European powers. Again, at this point, we were concerned with Europe, such as France and Britain, Spain. We didn't want them regaining any kind of influence. All right, part 2. President James Monroe, creating a strong federal government. How Congress tried to strengthen the national economy, and how the Supreme Court rulings supported federal power and economic growth. After 1815, many Americans believed the government should take action to improve the economy. They favored a strong federal government. So this is all occurring during James Monroe's administration. 3 influential congressmen favored federal action. So you've got Clay, you've got Webster, Calhoun. They represent different areas of the nation. Clay speaks for the West. He argues for better roads and canals. Calhoun speaks for the South. He's against any kind of high tariffs because they raise the price of goods. Remember, the South has trade deals with Europe, and Europe sends the South goods back in return. Any kind of tariff on any European good would hurt the South. Webster speaks for the Northeast. He supports high tariffs as a way to protect northern industry. So again, you can see that there's some geographical differences that are setting up during Monroe's term. But these had been going on even prior to James Monroe's administration. The Supreme Court also promoted economic growth and federal power during this era. A famous Supreme Court case, McCulloch v. Maryland, in 1819 occurred. The state of Maryland tried to tax its branch of the federal bank. Remember, we're back to the federal bank. It was first chartered for 20 years. Okay, Hamilton proposed this. The charter expired. We suffered a bit during the War of 1812 to secure funding, but the bank comes back for 20 more years. And but not all states, consider the national bank a good thing. And again, Maryland's trying to tax it as a way to get rid of it. The Supreme Court rules and states that states have no power to interfere with federal institutions. And again, because of that, I should have said something there. The power to tax is the power to destroy. So again, they ruled in favor of a national bank, which would lead up to one more reason that the federal government, especially the Supreme Court, is growing in strength. All right, thanks for listening. Feel free to refer back to any of this should you need to.